I remember Chamberlain getting off the plane and saying, "I have in my hand today a guarantee from the German Chancellor there will be peace in our time." That lasted, I think, 3 weeks.
I was in the factory working, I was in the cutting room, and it was on a Sunday morning, because it was a Jewish firm. We didn't work on Shabbos, but we worked on Sundays. And when war was declared, it was, everybody was stunned. Everyone expected it and knew about it, but when it happened, there was a silence when it was announced war had been declared. And then I knew that I would have to go into the army. I'd be called up.
I remember the speech, "We are now at war with Germany."
Then the bombs started falling at Christmas, back end of 1940. One of the first raids that we had knocked this factory out. It was in the East End of London. So the company had a showroom in Leeds, in Cross Stamford Street. They converted that into a factory, and we moved up to Leeds on the assumption that we were going to come up here for 6 months, because we thought the war would finish in 6 months.
People didn't know what to expect, and they thought the planes were going to come over, because up to that point, Germany had invaded Poland, Czechoslovakia, you know what I mean, and they're throwing bombs down. So they thought that as soon as he declared war, that the bombs would come flying over.
My life stopped at 20. I was at the threshold of manhood, really. And that next stage was not taken away from me, changed, because I went into the army.
I'd never experienced anything like it in the 20 years that I'd lived. And then I experienced that anti-Semitism. I knew that I was not accepted.
So I remember my father said to me, "When you go in the Navy, you'll find a lot of people don't like Jews." I said, "Take it from me, you'll bump into it." He says, "But if anybody says anything to you, derogatory, smack them. If you've made a mistake, you can apologise. But if you don't," he said, "your life won't be worth living." So this fella said this. I turned round and I thumped whoever it was, because the lights went on the mess deck. Fight, you go up on the quarterdeck to fight then. And I saw I'd hit a stoker. He was tattooed. You couldn't see his face for tattoos. He was a well-built lad, and he gave me a drubbing down that quarterdeck. I mean, I think I must have weighed 9 stone nearly. And he was a big stoker. Anyway, whilst I could get up and have a go, I did, but in the end I couldn't get up anymore. And when I couldn't fight anymore, I was left like a whipped cur on the deck, and they went back to the film. I crawled into my hammock. I had to pull myself into the hammock. When I woke up in the morning, I had 2 black eyes, cuts up my lip, my body was full of bruises. It ached. And it took me all the time to get out of the hammock. At lunch, we sat at the mess table. This stoker said, "Pass the salt, please," and there were metal containers. So I found one of the sailors getting it to pass. No, I said, "I want the Jew to pass it." So as long as I can. It's the only time I hit him in the face with this metal salt cellar. Fight again. So I'm holding myself up. I thought, well, I will. But a hand on my shoulder, a fella said, "Just a minute." This was the butcher, a South African. He said to the stoker, he said, "What are you picking on this kid for? He's been on the boat 2 days. He hasn't said anything to anybody, and you're making his life a misery." He says, "Well," he said, "I haven't got any quarrel with you." He said, "Well, you have now," and he hit him. So they went on the quarterdeck, and I sat there like a prize monkey watching him give him a good hiding. And he made him apologise. And he said to me, if anybody ever says anything to you again," he said, "tell me." But nobody ever said anything.
I didn't realise it, but because of this experience, I was changing. New values were beginning to course through me. And I knew that there was more for me than those turgid backstreet workshops and backstreets clubs and pubs and all those things that take you nowhere. There must be something more for me. And after my experience of being blown up, when I began to reflect, I made a vow to myself, literally, I made it. I said, if ever I come out of this war alive, I will never, never go back to those dark grey walls of tailor shops and those nice things. I must make something more of myself, be something more than the life that I was deemed to live.
I went into the army, aged 20, a boy, naive, and I came out a man. I learned such a great deal about life. And that's, I thought I must like to say that.
Were there any particular experiences that stick with you that you haven't spoken about?
Yes, but I can't talk about it.
I came to Leeds. I worked in Leeds till I was 17, and then I joined the Air Force, volunteered in the Air Force. I wanted to get involved in the war. You chaps don't understand it because your generation, thank goodness, hasn't suffered the experiences that our families suffered. But I wanted to get involved in war. I hated fascism, and I wanted to do my part.
Yeah, I mean, my uncle, fought in the Second World War, and I think that, first of all, there are two ways in which that changed everything, because it was the first time, he'd actually experienced anyone outside of the Jewish community. So he was, rubbing shoulders with non-Jewish people. They were his comrades, and I think that strengthened the bonds between Jew and non-Jew, so that after the war, it was felt that we'd all fought together side by side for our country.
Now, I went in the Navy immature, unworldly. I'd lived in a ghetto all my life, and I didn't know many non-Jewish people. I went in for 4 years nearly in the Navy during the war. Went round the world here, there and everywhere, the Far East, so on and so forth. But I became a man in, about 3 months. I grew up into a man. So when I got demobbed, I got home, and my mother said to me, Mr. Clements is anxious. He wants to see you as soon as you get back. So you're going tomorrow to see him. I said, I'm not going to go back to Mr. Clements. She said, what do you mean? I said, I'm going. She says, you are going back to Mr. Clements. Now here, I've been round the world. I've been fighting and doing all the things that happens in a war in 4 years. And my mother says, you're not going. And I did what my mother said. Can you imagine a guy today doing that? No way.
When I was in the army, I thought, I'll never go back to the tailoring trade. Never. It's the worst thing in the world. Sitting down or standing up and sewing all the time.
Not like my brother.
But I came out of the army and went back into the tailoring trade for a while.
The first thing that you saw was it was quieter. We're used to being in the services, seeing a lot of active service. Leeds itself was to me, it appeared rural. It really did. It was very, very quiet. But I had this girlfriend that I'd been corresponding with, and when I was stationed in the UK, I was going out with her a bit. And she wrote me a letter on the Cocos Islands. Did I tell you this letter? Well, what happened was, she wrote and she said that in those days, young people did not live on their own. They either lived with their parents or they got married. And she wrote me a letter and she said, what's my intentions towards her now that the war was over? And I was sitting on a beautiful beach on the Cocos Islands enjoying the afterglow of a war. And it said, she said in as many words, if you want to marry me, that's fine. I'll marry you when you come home. But if you don't want to marry me, please let me know, because somebody else has just come back from somewhere who wants to marry her. And I thought, well, there's no point in going back. After being in a war for 4 years, or being in the services for 4 years, I found it impossible to go back and live with my parents, although we were very close. So I wrote back and said I'd marry her.